The frost bit hard at 6:52 a.m. on the runway at Ridgewood Field. Kane Whitaker was crouched under the old fuel truck, knuckles raw from a frozen valve, when the convoy of black Escalades rolled in. Elena Voss stepped out first. 4-inch Louboutins clicked across the ice like gunshots. She glanced once at his rusted 1998 Dodge Ram with 312,000 miles on it, then turned to her entourage and the 2 local pilots watching from the hangar door. That scrap heap belongs in a junkyard. How do you even keep this place running? Kane didn't move. The words landed like gravel in his chest. She had no idea the low-status airfield owner she'd just mocked was about to unravel a 52-year fraud empire that would end with her name on the wrong side of a federal indictment. What was buried inside the original 1972 financing papers that could bring down one of the richest women in the state? Kane straightened slowly, wiping grease on his coveralls. 41 years old, single dad, the kind of man people looked past the moment they saw the trailer behind Hangar 4. That trailer was home. Inside it, 9-year-old Lily was still asleep on the old couch, wrapped in the same blanket she'd had since she was 3. She always woke when the first maintenance call came before dawn, but today she'd slept through the cold start of the fuel truck. Kane was grateful. He didn't want her hearing those words. Ridgewood Field was 38 acres of cracked asphalt and fading white lines, 14 miles north of the city. No commercial flights, just student pilots circling the pattern, cargo runs at night, and skydivers who jump from 2,000 feet every weekend, weather permitting. Kane had kept it alive on a $187,000 annual budget for 11 years, ever since his father died. Every cracked seal, every overdue invoice, every late-night parts run in that same battered Dodge, he had handled himself. Elena Voss wore a Brioni coat that cost more than his yearly fuel budget. Her lead attorney, a man named Richard Hale, carried a leather portfolio thick enough to stop a bullet. They had come to buy the field for her luxury executive terminal project. Private lounges, valet for Gulfstreams, a helipad shaped like her logo. The offer was on the table. All Kane had to do was sign. He didn't. 14B only applies to designated commercial service airports, he said. Ridgewood is a GA facility under 14 CFR 139.5 subsection C, exempt. The exact language is on page 47 of the 2021 revision. Would you like me to quote it verbatim? The room went still. Hale's mouth opened, then closed. Voss's smirk, that polished, condescending curve she'd worn since stepping onto the frost, faded for the first time. Kane reached up and pulled the chain from under his coveralls. A faded blue dog tag dangled there, edges worn smooth from years against skin. Lily had been playing with it that morning while he made her oatmeal. She liked the way it clinked. He let it fall back against his chest now. A small weight, a reminder. Voss studied him differently. "You're more than a mechanic, Mr. Whitaker." He didn't answer. Not yet. But later that same afternoon, after the convoy had left and the runway was quiet again, the first text arrived from an unknown number. It contained a scanned copy of a 1972 financing agreement. The notary stamp looked perfect. The signature looked like his grandfather's. The document claimed a reversionary interest that would activate the moment Kane entered any sale talks. If triggered, the field would revert to a silent partner no one had ever heard of. The sender signed it simply, Marcus Vale. Kane stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. Outside, the smell of jet fuel drifted through the cracked window. Inside the trailer, Lily stirred on the couch and called out for him, her voice small in the cold air. He closed the phone and walked back to her. The dog tag clicked softly against his chest with every step. The papers were forgeries. He was sure of it, but proving that would take weeks. And the deeper he dug, the more names would surface. Airfield stolen between 2009 and 2022. 4 of them. Same tactics, same silent partner. And at the center of it all, the original 1972 documents that had never seen daylight in half a century. Whatever was buried inside them had already begun to move. And Elena Voss, whether she liked it or not, was now tied to the same chain. A new email pinged in. No subject. The attachment was a single PDF, a grainy scan of a 1972 airfield easement, the real one, stamped by a clerk whose name had been redacted with thick black ink. At the bottom, in the margin, someone had handwritten a note in faded ballpoint. Vale knows. Tell no one. Kane's pulse thudded in his ears. He forwarded the file to a burner address he hadn't used in 11 years. The reply arrived in 4 minutes. Confirmed authentic. Your grandfather's notary seal matches the original microfilm. Whoever sent this has access to the vault at Langley Annex B. Watcher 6. He deleted both messages, wiped the drive cache, and sat back. The smell of burnt coffee lingered from the pot he'd forgotten hours earlier. Outside, wind rattled the chain-link fence that bordered the runway. Somewhere beyond it, a single security light buzzed like an angry wasp. The next morning, Voss appeared without warning under the left wing of a Beechcraft Baron. Her Italian leather boots crunched the frost. She wore a charcoal Brioni coat that cost more than his trailer, collar turned up against the cold. No smirk this time, just a flat, searching stare. Mr. Whitaker, we need to talk. Privately. He slid out from under the fuselage, grease streaking his knuckles. The dog tag swung free for a second before he tucked it back beneath the faded flannel. Talk, he said. She handed him a manila folder. Inside were copies of the same 1972 documents he'd received by text, except these carried fresh annotations in red ink. Every reversion clause circled. Every silent partner reference underlined twice. Marcus Vale, she said quietly. That name keeps appearing in every due diligence packet my firm has touched in the last 14 months. For airfields, all sold a loss, all clawed back by mystery liens within 90 days. My clients are hemorrhaging 7 figures, and I'm the one who signed the opinions. Kane closed the folder. Why bring this to me? Because yesterday you quoted subsection 14.3 of an obscure 2021 revision like you wrote it yourself. And because when I ran your name through our conflict database last night, the system spat back a redacted file so heavily classified it nearly melted my clearance level. He said nothing. The Baron's aluminum skin creaked as the sun warmed it. Voss stepped closer. Her voice dropped. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here because someone is using my name and my firm to launder stolen airfields. If Vale is real, he's about to surface. And when he does, I need to know whose side you're on. Before Kane could answer, his phone vibrated. Unknown number again. He answered on speaker, so she could hear. A calm, cultured voice filled the cold air. Kane, it's been a long time. 42 missions together, if memory serves. You still keep that tag under your shirt. Kane's grip tightened until the plastic case groaned. Voss's eyes widened. The voice continued, smooth as aged whiskey. I have the original 1972 trust instrument. The one with your grandfather's genuine signature and the codicil that names me trustee. Meet me at Hangar 7 tonight. 2,200 sharp. Come alone, or the little girl's school bus might take an unexpected detour tomorrow. The line went dead. Voss's face had gone pale beneath her flawless makeup. That was Marcus Vale. Kane slipped the phone into his pocket. The dog tag felt heavier now, pressing against his sternum like a second heartbeat. He could still smell the faint trace of Lily's strawberry shampoo on the chain from when she'd worn it that morning. He looked at Voss for a long second. You want to know whose side I'm on? Then you're coming with me tonight. But first you're going to help me do something I should have done years ago. He walked past her toward the trailer, boots leaving dark prints in the frost. She followed without being asked. Inside, he opened the small gun safe bolted beneath the sink and removed a locked metal box the size of a cigar case. The combination was still the same, 287. The number of combat sorties he'd flown before the crash that ended his career and buried his name. When the lid clicked open, Voss drew in a sharp breath. Inside lay a single worn dog tag, identical to the one around his neck, except this one carried a different name. The one the world had been told died in a training accident over the Hindu Kush in 2009. Kane set the tag on the table between them. The metal caught the weak light and threw it back cold. Marcus Vale didn't just steal airfields, he said. He stole my life, and now he's threatening my daughter. So we're going to hang her 7. But we're not going to listen. We're going to finish what he started in 1972. Voss stared at the second tag, then at him. For the first time, her polished confidence cracked wide open. She reached out, hesitated, then touched the edge of the metal with one manicured fingernail. The trailer's heater rattled to life, pushing warm air across their faces. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the low drone of an approaching turboprop. Kane closed the box and slid it into the inner pocket of his coveralls, right next to his heart. The dog tag around his neck clicked once as he stood. The same soft sound it had made every time Lily played with it. The same sound it would make when this was finally over. But first there was one more name on the 1972 document he needed to find before tonight. A name that would explain why Elena Voss's firm had been chosen to handle every single fraudulent sale. And why the man who once flew wingman to Kane Whitaker now wanted them both dead. The turboprop's drone grew louder, slicing through the thin morning air like a warning. Kane stepped out of the trailer first, the metal box a solid weight against his ribs. Voss followed close, her Louboutin heels crunching frost that hadn't thawed. She kept glancing at the pocket where the second dog tag now rested, as if it might burn through the fabric. They reached the old Ford pickup in silence. Kane slid behind the wheel. She climbed in without protest. The cab smelled of oil and yesterday's coffee. He turned the key. The engine coughed once, then caught with a growl that rattled the loose change in the cup holder. Hangar 7 is 40 minutes from here if we take the service road, she said, voice lower than before. Security sweep starts at 0600. We'll have a narrow window. Kane didn't answer. He reached into the glove box, pulled out a folded 1972 manifest, and handed it across. The paper was brittle, edges yellowed. One corner still carried a faint coffee stain from the night he first stole it from a records vault in Kabul. Voss unfolded it carefully. Her eyes tracked the typed columns. When they reached the final signature line, her manicured finger stopped dead. Carlton Reed, she whispered. The name sat there in faded ink, right above the faded stamp of a long-defunct shell company. My firm's original silent partner. He died in 2011. Heart attack, or so the obituary said. Kane shifted into drive. Gravel sprayed behind them as the truck lurched onto the county blacktop. Reed didn't die. He changed his name the same week Marcus Vale supposedly crashed his F-16. Same week the airfield deeds started vanishing. Same week someone buried Captain Kane Whitaker under a headstone with the wrong name on it. The symbolic weight of the dog tag pressed against his sternum with every bump. Lily used to tug on it when she was small, giggling at the metallic click it made. He could still hear that sound in the quiet hours. It had followed him through 6 years of hiding, through every midnight run to check the perimeter, through the custody hearing where Elena Voss's firm had argued he was unfit. A new tension coiled his gut. The manifest wasn't the only thing missing a piece. Last night, after Voss left the diner, he had found fresh tire tracks behind the trailer. Wide, aggressive tread. Not local law enforcement. Not her people. Someone else was already circling. His phone buzzed on the bench seat between them. Unknown number. He let it ring twice before answering on speaker. A distorted voice filled the cab, calm and metallic. You still have the original ledger, Whitaker, or should I say Captain Vale's favorite wingman. Bring it to Hangar 7 tonight, or the girl dies at 2:14 a.m., same hour your bird went down. The line clicked dead. Voss's face had gone the color of old parchment. They have Lily. Kane's knuckles whitened on the wheel. They think they do. He reached under the seat, pulled out a small black pouch, and tossed it into her lap. Inside were 3 passports, all with his face, but different names and a single burner phone. The screen already showed an active tracking app. A green dot pulsed steadily 40 miles east, moving toward an abandoned quarry. "That's not my daughter's signal," he said. "It's a decoy I planted with a friend. Real Lily is safe with the only person I trust." But the man on that call just tipped his hand. He's using Vale's old encryption, the same one we designed together in 2007. The truck reached the turnoff for the service road. Kane killed the headlights, even though dawn was still a pale rumor on the horizon. The forest pressed close on both sides, branches scraping the mirrors with wet, whispering sounds. Voss stared at the burner, then back at the manifest. If Reed is alive, if he's the one who funneled every sale through my firm, then my entire client list is built on blood money. I spent 12 years thinking I was cleaning up old aviation disputes. I was laundering them. Kane gave a single nod. The early competence flash from the night before had been small. Disabling her firm's GPS trackers with a $37 soldering iron and a paperclip. This one would be larger. He needed her to see the shape of the machine before the gears caught her. He pulled the truck behind a rusted equipment shed 2 miles short of Hangar 7 and killed the engine. The silence that followed felt heavier than the drone of the turboprop earlier. Frosted grass crackled under their boots as they stepped out. Kane popped the tailgate, dragged a weathered tarp aside, and revealed a long plastic case the color of desert sand. He flipped the latches. Inside lay a dismantled M4 carbine, serial numbers long ago ground away, and a black flight helmet with the faint outline of a removed squadron patch. The smell of gun oil and old sweat rose up, familiar as breath. Voss took an involuntary step back. "You kept it, piece by piece, over 14 years." He lifted the helmet. The interior still carried the faint imprint of his younger brow. "Tonight we're not walking in as the janitor and the lawyer. We're walking in as the two people Marcus Vale never managed to kill." But even as he said it, another layer peeled back inside him. The second dog tag wasn't the only ghost in that metal box. Beneath it, sealed in a plastic sleeve, had been a single photograph. A Polaroid taken in 2009. Kane, younger, laughing in the cockpit beside a man wearing captain's bars. The man's face had been scratched out with a razor blade, but the name on the flight suit was still legible. Marcus Vale. Kane had stared at that image for 43 seconds last night before sliding the box shut. The scratch marks were recent. Someone had been inside the trailer before Voss arrived. The same someone who left the fresh tire tracks. A new mini-crisis tightened around them now. They were no longer the hunters. They were being drawn into a trap built on a document that listed not 4 names, but 5. The 5th signature belonged to someone still breathing, someone whose identity would rip the last of Elena Voss's world apart the moment it surfaced. Kane chambered around. The metallic clack echoed across the frozen ground. He looked at Voss, really looked, and saw the calculation in her eyes shift from self-preservation to something colder. "Resolve. We have 6 hours until the meet," he said, and one name left to burn. The man who signed that ledger as legal counsel in 1972. The man who just called us from a burner routed through the same satellite constellation Vale used in Afghanistan. He held up the burner phone. The screen now displayed a new text. 3 words only. Hangar 7. Midnight. Below it, a photograph had been attached. Lily's stuffed rabbit, the one she never slept without, sitting on a metal table under harsh fluorescent light. The rabbit's left ear still carried the faint coffee stain from the morning Kane had spilled his mug, trying to make her laugh. The dog tag clicked once against his chest as he exhaled. The sound followed them both into the tree line as they began the long, silent approach to the hangar's perimeter fence. Kane moved first, low and deliberate, boots sinking into the half-frozen mud. Voss followed 3 paces back, her breath fogging in short, controlled bursts. The rabbit photo burned behind his eyes. Every step felt like walking across broken glass. They reached the side door of Hangar 7 at 11:47. The lock had been left open, a deliberate invitation. Inside, the overhead lights hummed at 60 hertz, throwing long shadows across rows of decommissioned military crates. In the center of the cleared space stood a folding table. On it, the stuffed rabbit. Beside it, a single manila folder thick with yellowed paper. And behind the table, seated in a director's chair, as if this were a boardroom and not an abandoned hangar, was Judge Harlan Creed. Creed looked exactly like the man who had once worn those captain's bars in the 2009 Polaroid. 68 now, silver at the temples. A charcoal Brioni suit tailored so sharply it could have drawn blood. On his left wrist, a Patek Philippe that caught the fluorescent glare every time he moved. His Italian loafers, spotless despite the mud outside, rested inches from the concrete floor. The same man who had laughed in Kane's face 23 years earlier on the tarmac at Ramstein. "You always did like dramatic entrances," Sergeant Creed said. His voice carried the smooth cadence of a man who had spent decades issuing rulings from elevated benches. "Though I suppose it's Major now. Or was it Colonel before you walked away?" Kane said nothing. He kept the rabbit in his peripheral vision. The coffee stain on its left ear looked almost black under the lights. Voss stepped forward. "You have my daughter." Creed offered a small, regretful smile. "I have leverage. There's a difference." He tapped the folder. "This ledger you've been chasing? It ends with my signature. Legal counsel for the Shell Consortium that moved certain assets out of Vietnam in '72. Your grandfather knew. He was going to testify, so we removed him. Cleanly. The crash was ruled pilot error. Marcus Vale flew that bird. I signed the report. Simple as that." The words landed like weighted drops. Kane felt the dog tag grow warm against his skin, as if the metal itself remembered. "You left the photo on my trailer," Kane said quietly. Creed leaned back. "A courtesy. I wanted you to understand how thorough we were." "The scratch marks?" "Mine. I thought it might slow you down." Clearly it didn't. He checked his Patek. "Your daughter is safe. For now. She's in a car 3 miles from here with 2 of my people. The moment this conversation ends badly, that changes." Voss's hand tightened on the grip of her concealed pistol. Kane caught her wrist without looking. "Not yet," Creed continued, voice still polished, still reasonable. "I'm prepared to be generous. $2 million in an offshore account. New identities. You disappear. The ledger stays buried. Everybody wins." Kane finally moved. He crossed to the table, picked up the rabbit, and tucked it gently inside his jacket. The fabric smelled of Lily's shampoo and diesel. The gesture was so tender it seemed to unsettle even Creed. "No," Kane said. The judge's expression flickered for the first time. "No, you don't get to rewrite the ending, Harlan. Not this time." From the rafters above, a new sound clicked on. Red indicator lights. For wireless cameras. Creed noticed them a half-second too late. Kane spoke directly toward the nearest lens. "This is Major Elias Kane, retired. Serial number 478291. I am transmitting live to the Federal Circuit Court live stream and to every member of the House Judiciary Oversight Committee. The encryption key is embedded in the dog tag I'm wearing. If you're watching, you already have the full ledger. Every signature, every account, every name." Creed rose slowly. The chair scraped back with a metallic shriek. "You're bluffing." Kane pulled the second dog tag from beneath his shirt, the one that wasn't his. He held it up so the cameras could read the etched serial number. Then he pressed his thumb to a micro switch soldered to the back. A small green light blinked once. "Signals live, Your Honor. We're at 1.2 million concurrent viewers and climbing. The oversight chair is in the chat. Way for the people who used to call me scrap metal." The color drained from Creed's face in real time. The Patek suddenly looked too heavy on his wrist. Voss stepped into frame beside Kane. Her voice was ice. "My daughter. Now." Creed's mouth opened, closed. For the first time in decades, the man who had dictated terms from behind mahogany benches had no script. The silence stretched. The hum of the cameras filled it. At 12:07 a.m., the side door burst open. Two tactical officers in unmarked gear entered with Lily between them. She ran straight to Voss, burying her face in her mother's coat. The rabbit's ear brushed her cheek. The coffee stain left a faint mark on the fabric. Creed watched it happen. His shoulders sagged. The Brioni suit no longer looked like armor. Kane spoke again, this time only to him, voice low enough that the mics barely caught it. "You have 10 seconds to decide how this ends on camera. Harlan, private first, then public, or I let the feed run until sunrise." Creed's eyes moved from Kane to the cameras, to the child now safely in her mother's arms. Something ancient and exhausted moved behind them. He turned toward the nearest lens. "My name is Harlan Josiah Creed. For 31 years, I sat on the federal bench. Tonight, I admit under oath that I conspired to murder Captain Daniel Voss in 1994. I falsified the accident report. I accepted payments from a consortium that has operated outside the law since Vietnam. I threatened a child to protect myself." His voice cracked on the last word. He looked directly at Kane. "I was wrong. About all of it." The private apology came next, so quiet only Kane and Voss heard it. "I am sorry, heiress. I looked at the man who carried the bodies out of that jungle, and I only saw the uniform. I never saw you." Kane stared at him for a long moment. Then he killed the live feed with a second press of the dog tag. The red lights died. The hangar felt suddenly smaller. 2 hours later, in a quiet precinct interview room that smelled of burnt coffee and disinfectant, Creed signed the full confession. No deal. No immunity. His Patek lay on the metal table between them like a surrendered weapon. When the federal marshals led him away at 3:14 a.m., he did not look back. The auction room where it all began, where Elena Voss had been publicly stripped of her inheritance 6 months earlier, convened its final session at 10 the next morning. The same polished bidders filled the same leather chairs. The same gavel waited on the same block. This time the auctioneer read a different verdict. By order of the United States District Court, all assets formerly held in the Voss Family Trust are hereby restored in full to Elena Marie Voss and her daughter, Lily. Title to the original 73-acre tract, the hangar complex, and the mineral rights beneath it revert immediately. The 1972 ledger has been unsealed. All related claims are extinguished. A murmur rippled through the room. Several of the men who had smirked at Voss that first day now stared at their Italian shoes. One of them, the real estate developer who had called her the help's daughter, actually stood and began a slow clap. It spread, not in celebration of her, exactly, in recognition of what had just been dragged into the light. Voss did not smile. She simply walked to the front, signed the transfer papers with a hand that no longer trembled, and left the gavel behind. 3 weeks later, the trailer smelled of fresh pine and pancakes. Kane stood at the small stove, flipping blueberry cakes, while Lily sat at the table, coloring a picture of a rabbit with one brown ear. The dog tag hung on a new chain above the sink, catching morning light. Outside, Voss was teaching the old mechanic's dog how to sit. The animal's tail thumped against the frosted grass in steady rhythm. The photograph from 2009 had been restored. Kane and Captain Daniel Voss smiled out from the cockpit, faces unmarred. It leaned against the coffee mug that had left its permanent stain on Lily's rabbit all those mornings ago. Kane watched his daughter's small hand move across the paper. He thought about the man he had been at Ramstein, the man they had laughed at and discarded. He thought about the slow, deliberate path that had led him back to this exact moment. Some debts are collected in blood, others in silence. The best ones are collected in front of the very eyes that once looked away. That night, after Lily was asleep and the rabbit rested safely in the crook of her arm, Elena Voss found Kane on the porch steps. She sat beside him. Their shoulders touched. The cold air carried the scent of wood smoke from a neighbor's chimney. She spoke first. "He wrote me a letter from prison. Just one line. Tell the major the scratch marks were never meant for him." Kane nodded once. The dog tag clicked softly against his chest as he breathed. They sat like that until the stars wheeled overhead. Two people who had been told they were scrap. Two people who had quietly kept every receipt. In the end, the ledger wasn't about revenge. It was about weight. About making sure the scales balanced, even if it took decades and cost everything except what truly mattered. The rabbit's ears still carried that faint coffee stain. Some marks, it turns out, are worth keeping. They remind you where you've been and how far the long road home can stretch when someone believes you're worth a walk.